Hi, I'm Diana Yoakley. I'm a peaceful parenting coach and mom of three, and I'm delighted to give you the latest science backed research on child development, parenting, and to support you in showing up as the parent that you want to be. Welcome. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today on the podcast. I have here with me Lori Sugarman-Li. Welcome, Lori. So glad to have you here today.
Thank you. It's really lovely to be with you.
It is. I'm really excited to talk about our topic for today. And before we get into that, I want to give everybody a little bit of a bio and background on Lori's work. So, Lori believes deeply in the power of families and is a passionate voice in the cultural shift, aiming to articulate the value and visibility of unpaid work. Her career as a communications strategist, combined with a decade devoted to full-time care of her family, community, and children's charities worldwide, served as the inspirational backdrop for her professional relaunch as a coach, speaker, and author. She's dedicated to fostering meaningful conversations within families, encouraging them to contemplate how they care for one another and their shared space. Lori, her husband, and two sons are Canadian born and live steps from Lake Michigan in Chicago. So I'm so excited to have you here today because in the United States, summer is approaching and we've already started summer break. And I know that with kids kind of home more than usual, if they're not doing like full-time daycare or something like that, parents often are kind of faced with this question of how do I structure the summer? How, what type of responsibility do I put on the kids since they're around more? Do we put more like responsibilities for helping around the house and things like that? And we're definitely going to cover a broader subject than just summer, but I think it's perfect timing to kind of consider this for many individuals that are coming up with building some routines around summer break and how you fill the days and how these family traditions and values and roles that everybody in the home plays feed into that. So yeah, would love for you to kick us off with a little bit more of an expansion of how you came to this work and and continuing to do it today.
For sure. I just wanted to reiterate what you said, which is it is perfect timing to have this conversation because not only is summer a great time to engage kids because they're around more, but they can also see more of what goes on in the home that is typically invisible to them, right? A lot of this work that we know mothers, for the most part, are carrying that happens sort of silently and magically in the shadows when children are at school or at play or asleep. And so, this opportunity to connect more over these beautiful expressions of care for one another over the summer is terrific. And also, because we have such a lovely long summer, it gives kids a chance to really build that muscle such that when we get back into that like more stringent routine in September, it's already fitting into like the daily balance. So I'm so glad we're having this conversation now, and thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. I think it's a really important topic. And I'd love to dive into, you know, um, why is it important? I mean, you talked a little bit on this, and I'd love to kind of throw in like, I know that the research shows that having kids do chores is actually beneficial for them. At the same time, there is this like competition with how much more important is it than letting children play
Right.
developmentally, which one is more beneficial, and how do you maybe balance both in a way in a family that makes the most sense?
So many interesting things to touch on there, but I think the biggest opportunity that we have is to really change the energy around the concept of chores. I mean, even this name chore that we give to this work of what
Yeah.
is really like nurturing and nourishing one another and caring for our investments like our home and our car and adhering to community and municipal standards. I mean, not to suggest it's not a heavy load, but this is the work of our humanity, and this is the work of empowering and of trusting, and so this idea that there are two buckets, one being chores and one being play, is like it's actually an opportunity, right, to sort of take down the fence between those two things and bring kids into the work of care and of protecting investments such that they are learning the value not only to the wellness of the family, but back to themselves and, collaborating on things like laundry and cooking and yard work can really be like beautiful moments for a family and can involve play and can involve laughing and growing, learning. And so I think that the dichotomy that we've created, it's maybe time to unlearn that and connect this work
Yeah.
of home and care more towards a concept of gratitude, a concept of love. And in this book that I've written for children, which I'd love to share more about, I
Hmm.
speak about it as like it's a hug for your family when you do something around the house that cares for them.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and so I love that changing the an energy around this, probably mostly for parents, but also for the children, because I know a lot of parents do struggle with this concept of I think it can feel like a power struggle, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes, maybe often, to get kids to clean up their room and to, do something other than what they're doing. And once parents can reframe this within themselves, I think then they deliver the message differently too, right? So it doesn't seem like this authoritarian, like top down, get off the couch and stop reading your book and come feed the dog,
Right.
versus like, yeah, setting it up in a different way. But I think we need your support in untangling that, because to get to
Yeah.
that,
Yep.
we need some skills.
So a terrific place to start because you're absolutely right. The model of this being like because I told you so, because I said so, because you have to, because you don't get your allowance unless you do. It's really time to sort of move away from that kind of, again, energy. Really, the opportunity that I share with parents when I coach them or do workshops is start by talking about your family's values. What's important to you? And every family has this beautiful, magical opportunity to be anything they want to be, right? Inside their four walls and as they move through the world together and in tandem. And even younger children can be such meaningful participants in a conversation around values. And obviously, you will select the right language depending on how old your children are. But to say to a child, like, what's important to you about your space? What's important to you about the space that we share? What makes you feel safe, comfortable? And sit down as a family and talk about what are all the things that are really meaningful for us to do in our home? And also, are there things that we do because we think we have to, but actually are not that meaningful to us that we can maybe release, right? And in the process of these conversations, when you can identify what you value as a family, from values come standards. Okay, so this is important to us. So here's how we'll do it. Here's how we'll keep it. And it becomes almost like a family agreement that everybody is buying into. And so when you have one of those moments where a child maybe isn't super keen to get involved, the opportunity is more to say, well, remember, this is what we agreed we would do together, or this is what we all shared was important to us. And remember, we had said like we all have a part in it. And so, let me know if you need like a little bit of time, a little bit of space, but I would love it if you could just come back to me and let me know when you're ready to tackle whatever the thing might be. And also, the language that we use to talk about the work of home and family is really, really important. And so, I think this concept of being helpful and a helper is really a beautiful one. That's a meaningful word for kids. But when we as a parent say, can you help me with, and especially moms, because we know that moms carry 75% of the load. And that's just the physical executional load. The mental and emotional is even more weighty, right? When we say, can you help me? The implication is that this is my work, mom's work, and you should wait until I invite
Wow.
you in and I will tell
Yeah.
you what to do. But the real opportunity is to build kids who are collaborators and also leaders and noticers, such that they don't see the work as mom's work, but as you had said, like the family is a team, right? And when we all pitch in, not only does the work take less of our time because we're more efficient at tackling it, but there's less nagging, less resentment, less duplication and forgetting, all these things that cause us stress. So if we can speak to kids with a language that's more collaborative. Hey, I was just about to do this task, and I realize you might not have ever seen me do it before. I'd love to show you so that you feel comfortable doing it as well. Or, hey, I was just about to tackle this, but I realize it's a two-person job. I could really use your strength, your cleverness, your creativity, whatever it is, to get the job done.
Yeah, and you're inviting them with a request without, yeah, making it like a command, right?
Exactly.
And I love that it's tying it into values, because if it's going to be really hard to do that, like request and get a affirmative answer if you haven't discussed the values in advance and the standards. So I love that you're mentioning like you have to have a foundation as a family that you're kind of discussing on a bigger picture so that they have a voice and you get some buy-in. Otherwise,
Exactly.
they're gonna feel like you're
Exactly.
pushing this down on them. It's your agenda, and what choice do they
Exactly.
have anyways, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it's not to say that these values and these agreements that you create can't evolve. I mean, obviously it's organic and as life stages evolve in your family, as people take on different commitments and have different capacity. And also like what's really interesting is that when kids, of course you want your kids to succeed and thrive in these roles, right? This is not about unloading work onto kids. And it's not about perfection at all. It's about an opportunity for kids to feel empowered, to feel trusted, to feel a part of important things, and to gain these life skills that are going to serve them when they become independents and someday when they become partners, such that they can participate as equitable partners. And that is a huge part of why I wrote this book for children and really for families, is to break the cycle of gender inequity in domestic labor and to really impart in kids from a young age that the work of home and care is not gendered work. It's not women's work and mom's work, but it is the work of our humanity. It's the work of explaining the gratitude for all that we have and for those with whom we share a space.
yeah, yeah, that's so many important topics there. And I love that that's the underlying theme because, yeah, I think a lot of moms listening to my podcast are tired and because they are doing just a lot of tasks and there's just doesn't seem to be enough time in the day, even for like a 5-minute meditation, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes. Um, that seems like a lofty goal, right? So I love that we're teaching this early on. And one of the questions I think some of our audience might ask is, um, what about if your partner doesn't necessarily agree? But also, what if they do agree, but then they kind of have their own ideas about like how to divide it up, and it's been kind of set in their ways, etc. So, how do you navigate that with co-parenting? I guess is the next question, because there's two adults at the table with a bunch of kids talking about the
Hmm.
family vision, mission, values, and obviously the other co-parent is going to have a lot more influence over the conversation than just you with
Right.
your kids, right?
So I think it's a terrific idea for parents to sort of get on the same page in advance, maybe of the family meeting. And I coach couples a lot. I say I'm like WD-40 for families. I help them get unstuck, when they're just not able to flow in that optimal way. And really, the opportunity for unsticking is to embrace a new language, as we talked about, and some systems that help with the division of labor and help with the conversations that can really identify where you agree on values and standards and where you differ. And what's really important is understanding why do you differ, right? What's at the root of that? If you have different standards, or if you believe that things, should one believes that something should be done and one believes that something shouldn't be done. And it's really interesting to dig into why we feel that way. Very often it's like, well, we were raised differently. Perhaps we came from different cultural backgrounds. Perhaps we came from different sized families. Perhaps I came from a single parent household. You came from, a multi-generational household. Whatever it is, it's just so interesting and enlightening to understand, like, why do we feel so differently about taking out the trash, whatever it is? Because it feels like a small thing, but if you think about it, taking out the trash is like a daily occurrence in our life every week, every month, every year for the entirety of our lives. And if we don't agree, and if it's a point of stress, a point of friction, it's actually super valuable to invest some time in speaking about it. And I use the system developed by Eve Rodsky called Fair Play. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's a fantastic book and system for helping families, partnerships move toward equity in the division of labor in their home. It's a very powerful system. And it focuses mostly on cishet partner relationships. And it is a very gendered conversation. All of the research that we have really is from those types of relationships. Interestingly, we do have a little bit of research from same gender relationships, which tells us that, of course, this isn't as much of a conflict, right? Because gender roles don't come into it as much, which is really interesting. Um, but bringing kids into the conversation was something that I really felt was an opportunity. And so I wrote our home so that it wouldn't be one more thing on mom's list, right? To figure out how to get the kids involved. I have, created this as a tool, as a spark for meaningful family conversations. So mom can kind of say, oh yeah, like I just found this book today and it's so interesting. And like, let's talk about how it makes you feel. And, this is for obviously for families with younger children, but in the case that some of your listeners have older kids, I hope it can inspire you to even to say to your kids, you know what? I was listening to this podcast and I realized there's a conversation that we've never had, or there's something that I missed, in my parenting that I would love to bring up today. And it's never too late and we're never too old. And there's always an opportunity to sort of bring something new, as they say, when you know better, you do better. So I hope this book can inspire all families to spark these meaningful conversations.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a great way to frame it. If parents don't have a structure around like some of this yet, is to say this is something we haven't had a chance to talk about. I haven't had a chance
Yeah.
to get to this. I mean, too busy working, right? With like other
Right.
things. That's such important importance to keep in mind. And and then, yeah, and as we think like how to engage kids, so let's say a parent brings a book or has this conversation with their kids. Is there an element of playfulness or what's in it for them? I mean, obviously, like the values discussion is kind of like a conversation, but then day to day, how do you actually execute this to keep kids engaged and motivated once they forget about that values conversation? And then do you have to like sit down and re-engage with that? Or yeah, if you can walk us
A
through a little bit
hundred
about the next
percent
step
there.
after that.
Yes, 100% there can be an element of playfulness. And it's like really whatever works for your family. Because as mentioned, of course, you want kids to feel good about this, to succeed, to thrive. You want them to be connecting with tasks that, address their strengths, that bring out the best in their capabilities. I have my 12-year-old son. He is the chief laundry folder in our family. But when he folds the laundry, like he gets to watch sports highlights, why wouldn't I want him to enjoy that time? And then he doesn't feel the weight of the task because he's enjoying watching soccer highlights. And then it becomes sort of meditative for him to do it. And so it becomes like a matter of course that this is something that he engages in now. Now, that's a muscle that we've been building for a while. We started off with him folding like little square cleaning rags. But once he realized he could do that, we kind of took steps from there. My older son, my 14-year-old, he loves music. He is a musician. And so he does tasks that he can wear his headphones, like vacuuming and stuff like that. So he puts his headphones on, listens to the latest releases, and he's bopping around the house, emptying the dishwasher or vacuuming up crumbs. And so it's really all about making this less. I mean, the literal definition of chore is dreaded, repetitive, unappealing work. It's such a downer of a
Wow.
word
Yeah.
to be using because emptying the dishwasher takes like 2.5 minutes. It's it's only so daunting and heavy when one person is doing it all. And the
Yes.
opportunity to share and spread the work is really what makes it less of a stress for the family.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, I love that. And sometimes parents might think like, well, if the kid's doing it, I'm just gonna have to redo it after them because it's still not done. Like there's still stuff on the floor after they vacuum, or maybe, the dishes, they're taking like an hour to like swirl water around with soap. Like,
Yep. Yep.
um, and we even hear of couples of like reorganizing each other's like dishwasher like setup because you didn't load the dishwasher the correct way. What about when parents kind of tend towards kids like this a little bit for those
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
struggle maybe with a little bit of perfectionism
Right.
or
Okay.
a
So
job
this
that's
is
incomplete?
Right. So this is really interesting. And this is where it's really important to understand how we in our family are all wired differently, right? And not only wired differently for sort of capability and capacity, but for preference and for what makes us like thrive in our own space. And I love to use this example. Again, my 14-year-old, I am quite like a type A, like everything tucked away, clean surfaces, super organized. That is the kind of environment that makes me feel like relaxed. My 14-year-old is almost the opposite of that. He loves for his room to be um, beautifully cluttered with all of the things that evoke memories that are nostalgic. A Lego set that he built 7 years ago, a little trophy that he got from Taekwondo when he was 3, letters that he received, photos from special days out. And if I were to go into his space and say, this is ridiculous. Like, this has all got to be put away. That would not honor him and what he needs to feel like safe and like happy and loving his space. So, what I teach him is how to be his best self. And really, my only like must is that we adhere to sort of like health and safety standards, right? So, we don't want to have food on the floor or whatever. But otherwise, he determines what he wants the space to look and feel like. And from there, I will teach him, like, okay, so if you're going to have like Legos lined up all along the headboard of your bed, this is how you're going to dust. And this is like how frequently it would be ideal to do so. And, when he's folding his clothes, so I'm the chief like laundry washer in the family, but my kids do the folding. And so I will just leave their clean clothes on their bed and they fold it however it works for them. And that way they know where it is when they put it away. And I will open his closet and I'll look at a shelf and I'll say, is this organized? Is this clean? And he'll tell me, yes, it is. And so I'll be like, okay, that's your organized. Like that works for you. Perfect. It doesn't have to look like my shelf. And I don't have to find anything in your space. If it works for you, it works for you. So really in these conversations that you have as a family, and this is what really we see changing is we have a starting point of like what we can tackle, what we feel we can do. But then you see, oh, that's actually not a good match for my kid, or that's not actually something that they're going to thrive in or that they enjoy or whatever. And then you shift around.
Yeah, I love that. I think it can definitely be kind of a gray zone for parents, and it's important for them to, like you said, adapt it to their unique environment without expecting perfectionism, and assimilation. What about common areas, like, for example, the living room, right?
Yeah.
Where,
Uh-huh.
even between partners, there's preferences, but what is a tidied up living room per whose standards? Like, where, how do you have these conversations, and whose
Yeah,
standards do you kind of go by? And yeah, just to kind of get into some of the practical elements as people
for
try to
sure.
implement,
Yeah, for
get
sure.
started.
So this is one of the things that you would chat about as a family. And, you would say like, all right, so for our living room, okay, so what are the things that we like to do in here? What are the things that make us feel comfortable? For example, if you have like a big cozy blanket, I, in my type anus, may always want the blanket to be like folded and placed nicely on the side. But then my son might say to me, yeah, but I feel like if it's always folded so perfectly, like I tend not to want to touch it and ruin it. But then I feel like I can't cozy into it. And I wish it wasn't always folded so perfectly because I feel like I can use it more if it's not. And that's really interesting for me to hear. And so when it comes to a shared space, again, like health and safety, yeah, has to come first. But you express as a family, like, well, what do I like to get out of this space? Well, what do I like to get out of this space? And what do we sort of commit to one another? Is the minimum standard of care that we will leave this space in. If you do more, terrific. But what's the minimum that we're going to do every night? So if you talk about a minimum standard of care for dishes, right? I might be the type of person that likes every single dish washed and dried and put away before we go to bed. But if my husband's the one that's actually in charge of doing the dishes, he should have some input into what that looks like. And if he says to me, like, okay, I understand that's what you would want, but for me, I feel so tired in the evening, whereas in the morning, I feel really, really fresh and it takes me half as much time to do the dishes. So I
Uh-huh.
would rather, I can we just leave them in the sink, but with like a little bit of water so nothing gets like crusty and dried. But like, I promise you, I'll do them in the morning and I'll put them away before you wake up. And so it's really the same thing. It's these conversations, and whoever really is in charge of the task ultimately, has a strong input into the standard.
Yeah, so it's almost like you're looking at kind of strength-based assignments, like you said, like an interest and
Exactly.
strength. Like, what have you? It's kind of like how we look for jobs. Like, where's the opportunity for employment? What am I good at? And what's the other one? What do I like to do? Right? Like, what's my
Sure.
passion? So, like,
Yeah.
trying to align that with these household responsibilities and match them up, and then kind of not micromanage other people too much, right? Because we know like an employee does not like to be micromanaged. That is so demotivating. It's like, tell me what the goal is and let me get there. I'll get you that, but let me get to it. Don't boss me around the whole time. It can feel very people can resist that control, right?
It's so interesting that you make that analogy because that's exactly what I talk about with a lot of my clients, which is like, treat your home as an organization. And you articulated this so well, which is like, sometimes things go off the rails. Sometimes things don't go perfectly well. But I always tell people, unless it's a matter of like real safety, you don't have to say anything in the moment, right? What I do encourage is that couples and families, if they can, have a weekly connect. And it doesn't have to be like a whole ordeal. Could be like you go on a walk and catch up. You could sit and have like a bowl of popcorn together and just agree to spend 15 minutes talking about how the week went or whatever. But that's the time where you bring little items when emotions are low and cognition is high. And you say, how did the week go for you? Like, what did you notice? Like, what can we share about what was tricky or complicated or annoying, whatever? And then you position it more like the two of you together against whatever the trouble is or the issue is, right? Instead of getting so heated over a sponge in the sink in the moment, you just sometimes things don't feel as big when you wait a couple of days to raise them, right? But you have these weekly meetings where you can say, like, hey, can I say something that, that I noticed this week? Like maybe you were feeling like maybe the way that we've organized things isn't ideal for you because I noticed like it wasn't actually done according to the conversation that we had. So do you want to change anything about our standard? Like, do you want to switch this task with me and I'll take the lead on it if it's not working for you. And, what would you like to take in return or whatever? And you make it really, as you had said, like as you would do in an organization with your weekly meeting with your manager or whatever it is. And only this
Mhm.
way, the two of you are equals in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can see that there definitely is a need for some conflict resolution skills for the parents and some negotiation skills, which, not everybody's exposed to that, right? And even in the workplace, sometimes you're not exposed to that, right? If you do work outside the home. So, um, and I can see the value of nonviolent communication, expressing our feelings, but not attacking other people's behaviors and assuming their feelings. So I'm wondering what makes it hard for parents to implement this? If there's like key points that make it hard, and then what would be some support that they can reach out to execute this more effectively?
So I think you mentioned this at the start, but something that parents really do struggle in is when we talk about getting kids involved in the work of the home, they do feel that they need to protect them from, tasks that feel weighty to us because a lot of people do believe that children should just be, left to play their only little once and, let them play. And then for older children, it's really this we feel sort of compelled to let them focus on their academics and their athletics or their creative pursuits or whatever it is that's going to jettison them to the best college or whatever their next step is. But the reality is that research shows that involvement in the acts of care as young as age 3 really do significantly serve kids in their building their self-esteem, building their ability to approach and complete and communicate about tasks, and in their results academically and in social relationships. And so this is part of holistic parenting, and this is a part of preparing them for these next stages. It's great if your child gets into a wonderful college, but if they don't know how to make themselves a nourishing meal the night before a big exam, or if they don't know that they need to wash their sheets, with a regularity, they're not going to thrive. And so it's really just about parents recognizing that this is part of their kids' like education and building to that success that they want for them.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying. It's not just a practical skill set, it's also building mental strength and emotional
That's it.
resilience.
That's
I
it.
mean, we know military is very famous for like the routines and the tasks, but it's not just because it needs to be done. It's also because it builds some self-discipline, right? And doing
100%.
something you're not comfortable with and still doing it. And so that brings me to think of like parents with kids with neurodiversity.
Yep.
How do we support parents that have kids with ADHD
Yeah.
or autism, other challenges
Yeah.
to, get them started on this as well?
Yeah, and so, that comes back to really like understanding how we all are wired and understanding how we all thrive. And again, knowing that this is not about perfection. This is about engagement. This is about participation and feeling that you're contributing to something important. It's so funny, now looking back at my own childhood, I have the perspective and the language to see that actually I believe my own dad had some kind of beautiful neurodivergence because when I was young, we would partner together on tons of things around the house because actually he had trouble sort of tackling and completing big tasks. And he knew that about himself. And so he would use me as a body double to keep him on track. And it's so
Yeah,
fascinating to look back at it now. Of course, at the
yeah,
time, I just felt, again, he made me feel important. He made me feel needed. He looped me into things that were like, meaningful, maybe even a bit beyond my years. And he trusted me. But it was really because he needed my skills to keep us on track, to take us to completion. And so I think body doubling is really a terrific one. And that collaborative approach for parents and kids who, and even sometimes it's not even about kids doing, it's just about kids observing, watching, again, making this work not invisible, but helping them understand all that goes into the wellness of the family. Even just that step is so, so meaningful.
Yeah, yeah, this is really exciting. I'm getting excited about this because you can even use I mean all the great things we've been talking about plus often parents that I work with, they're trying to work on building more influence and connection with their kids. And it's like, well, how can I? There's no time to connect. And sometimes I will suggest, like, well, what about all the things that you're busy doing because you can't
That's
connect?
it.
Pull them into
Yes.
it. How can you pull them into it and
Yes.
not make it this like mandatory, boring, like blah. And while I do say like make it a little bit more like playful, I don't mean like the whole thing has to be a laughter like
Yeah.
event. It's more about like is it easy like to not an easy physically task or even mentally like process wise, but is it easy to be with you together? Are you making this experience enjoyable enough for them that they want to return to it? And actually you can reap huge rewards because this is an opportunity to spend more time with your kid, and that's connection and
Exactly.
conversation and
Yes.
listening and unpacking their life and their scenarios while you're pulling weeds or gardening
Yeah.
or
Oh,
emptying the
gardening is such a
dishwasher,
good,
right?
yes, such a good one. And one other thing I'd like to layer on, which sometimes is really meaningful for engaging kids who don't feel super connected to the work is, we often will present our family with like a chore chart or a to-do list or like a really sort of like mechanical must do. But they don't often have the framework or the context for like, why do we feel we have to do all this stuff? And very often the why is firmly about and for them. And once they understand that, they're a little bit more involved as key players. I love to give this example. I have two teenagers now, and, we change our sheets once a week. And if I were just to say to them, today is the day that we're changing your sheets. I mean, how annoying is that, right? Like navigating the fitted sheet is probably one of the like, I mean, I can't believe someone hasn't figured something else out with the fitted sheet by now. But if I say to them, hey guys, I don't know if you realize this, but sleeping on a clean pillowcase really facilitates clear skin. And so for my 13 and 15-year-olds, that's like a light bulb going off. Like, oh, I get why we're doing this. This is important, and it's important for and to me. So I'm all in. Like I'm ripping that pillowcase off the pillow because I
Mm-hmm.
want to have good skin. I that's important to me at this stage. So find the reason why, if you have like a car that is really well loved, well traveled, you do a lot of carpooling, whatnot. You likely have like a delightful carpeting of crumbs and wrappers and maybe even a banana peel in the corner, right? You might be inclined to just be frustrated that the car is a mess. But if you take a minute to explain to the kids, let me help you understand how a car holds its value. We paid this many dollars for this car. We might drive it for 5 years. In 5 years, it's going to be worth this many dollars. I'm holding my hand up high if we keep it well, but lower many dollars if we don't keep it well. So when we go to sell it, if we have kept it really well, our family will get more money. If we don't keep it well when we sell it, we'll probably get a little bit less. So our opportunity as a family is to dream about what would we do if we got the more money? And everybody gets to contribute to that dream, and they also then contribute to keeping the car clean.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. What's in it for them? And it kind of
Yeah.
reminds me again of like sitting at the table with somebody you're negotiating with. You're trying to figure out what's in it for them so you can give them their best deal while still getting what you're wanting. So it's looking for a win-win. It's not you're not trying to trick them, but you are trying to find something that's in it for them because this is a life skill. I mean, right? Like kids need to learn to stand up for what they want. And it's also perspective taking. What's in it for mom? What's in it for me? What's in it for dad? And learning these negotiation skills, which, like I said, not even every parent is so skilled at them. I mean, I'm certainly, working on my own. But this is something that we want to prepare them for in the world.
You just said something really interesting that I'd love to
Yeah.
touch on, which is, the articulation of what's in it for mom. And I think this is hugely important because mothers don't very often express their own needs, right? And I think it's really meaningful. And this is another sort of element of language shift. Um, Again, the word thank you is beautiful and lovely, and everybody loves to hear it. But when a child participates in an element of care in the home and we say thank you, it's the same as when we use the words help me. The inference is that this was my work and you did me a favor, and so I'm saying thank you. But the real opportunity is to shift the language instead to acknowledge something specific about what the child has accomplished or contributed, and also what that has meant to me as mom. So I would say, oh my gosh, you did that so quickly. I didn't know you were so like adept at that task. Or like, oh wow, I really value the fact that you stepped in and took the lead on that, because as a result, like I had that half an hour to do something that was really important to me, right? And so really articulating the impact to the family is so much more than just like a thank you. It's more specific, it's more meaningful, and it's something for the kids to hang on to.
Yeah, yeah. It makes them feel like they're making a contribution to a system, to a,
That's it.
it's like, yeah, they are cleaning something that then mom doesn't have to clean. But if you, like you said, if you can reframe that as, thank you. Well, not thank you for doing it for me, but I was able to get something else done that was also important to me. And look how great of a job you did. And kind of, it's not so like you did this for me. It's more like there's a variety of impacts, and you
That's
have an
right.
impact in this house. You
That's
are
right.
valuable. You're
Yes, that's it.
important. Even if it
Yeah,
is helpful, it's not just that it's helpful, because in fact, it wasn't just mine to start with. It's all
that's
of
it.
ours. And I appreciate. And then you can, it's an opportunity for a parent to appreciate without saying, thanks for doing the task for me. But it's more like, I appreciate you being a member of this family. You're amazing. Like, you have these strengths, and
That's it.
build
Specifics.
self-confidence
Yes,
and self-esteem for the
that's it.
children as well. Yeah. So many great topics. Let me see. Did we miss any? I mean, I'm sure we have, and I know there's only so much time, but
Well, one thing you
anything like,
mentioned,
yeah.
yeah, sorry, I was just going to say one thing I know you
Yeah.
mentioned when we were chatting before we started the recording was about allowance. Um,
Yes.
and so, my perspective, and of course, every family is different. I do, of course, think that allowance is a fantastic tool for financial literacy, which is really wonderful for kids to understand how to responsibly spend money, how to save, how to allocate for charitable giving, and even how to invest. But what I caution families is, at the end of the day, this is not paid work. So the association with, receiving money for the doing of tasks without first instilling the inherent value of the beauty of this work as contributing to the wellness of the family misses an important step. So again, allowance is a terrific way to teach kids how to manage money, but it doesn't have to be connected to the completion of tasks. It can just be in and of itself for financial education. And then the tasks are connected more to extensions of care and contribution to the wellness of family.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to clarify, because I know that traditionally parenting has kind of taught us that we should pay for kids for doing chores. And then inevitably, I think the research was showing that it actually wasn't effective, because then kids would say, keep your money. I don't want to do it.
Yeah,
It's not
right.
worth the money. I should be getting paid more for this job, you
Right.
know? Yeah.
Wait until they're on their own and they realize, oh, wait a minute, who's paying for this now?
Yes, yes, yes. So yeah, I love that reframe. And yeah, and I think like if you're going to pay them an allowance or pay them some kind of income, I think you're spot on with use it as an opportunity to teach, not taking on credit card debt,
Yeah.
spending within your means,
Yep.
charity, gifting, you know, gifting to others, and that good feeling of helping others. So it kind of aligns back with like the element of doing housework. So I just want to clarify, if we don't say chores, what is a good term to use instead of that going forward
So
to
it's such
change
a
that
great
language?
it's it's such a great question, and changing the language is
Yeah.
trickier than
Yeah.
changing the energy around it, right? And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
it's really just about um how we speak about and tackle this work as an expression of gratitude for all that we have and with whom we share a space. It's less about the word itself, because that word is pretty entrenched in our
Yeah. I keep saying
lexicon.
it. I'm like, is it chores? I'm like, am
Yeah,
I supposed to be
yeah.
saying that?
But, it's really, again, it's about the energy. It's about the way that we approach it, the way that we talk about it. And again, it's not to suggest that this is not a heavy load. It is a lot, but we have an opportunity to lessen the weight, um, and just to lessen the sort of the stress that we feel around it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, such an amazing conversation. And for parents wanting to find out more about how to get started, because I'm sure some parents are really motivated to kick this off for the summer, but they're gonna run into they're gonna probably want some more resources. So if you could share a little bit about where they can find out more about you and also where your book is available for sale.
Oh, thank you so much. So I talk a lot about techniques for engaging kids and partnerships on my Instagram, which is at Our Home, Our Pride. And when I talk about pride, it's not a pride in perfection, but it's a pride in feeling safe and secure in your own space, right? Whatever that is for you. My website where you can find out more about my coaching is ourhomeourpride.com. If you're interested in my LinkedIn, it's at Lori Sugarman-Li. And my book, which is called Our Home, The Love, Work, and Heart of Family, is available everywhere that books are sold.
Amazing. I'm going to get my hands on my copy. And I love that it's a book because most of us read kids' books every now and then, if not every night. And so it's a great, easy way to connect on their level and to open up the conversation. And maybe the next step after that would be to sit down and have that discussion about what's important to us and the values and brainstorm a little bit to kind of kickstart that, and then move in from there with your additional resources.
I'd love to hear
Yeah.
how it goes for you.
Yeah, sounds amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know this was really, I think, just a different conversation. And like you said, some of us are just too busy doing all the things to do this. But if we can invest on the front end, then we can create more downtime back end for more, just play, actually, which is what, incorporating play in this, but also creating more time for play when we can distribute the labor more equally and set our kids up for success in their future adult relationships, for more equity and equality and all of those balanced
Well,
roles.
I so appreciate the opportunity to connect with your community. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you so much.